Device collections are logical containers for devices that we primarily use for management tasks, such as deploying software to groups of machines. In this hands-on lab nugget, we're going to create some custom device collections and look at the many ways that we can add members into them. From the desktop of SCCM Nugg, let's bring up Configuration Manager from the taskbar, and underneath Assets and Compliance, we're going to head down here to Device Collections. Notice here that we have 4 built-in collections. All desktop and server clients will contain all devices that have the client installed. That's why you see a member count of 0 here, because we haven't installed the client on anything yet. All mobile devices will contain mobile devices that have been enrolled by Intune. All systems is our catch-all that will contain pretty much everything. And all unknown computers is used for deploying operating systems to those bare metal machines that you bring up on the network with nothing on them. Now, you should rarely, if ever, use these built-in device collections as targets for deployments. A far better and safer option is to identify all the devices in your environment by common characteristics, such as by type and location. So, for example, all desktops at HQ, or all desktops at HQ in this department. That will narrow the scope and make it much easier to manage over time. So let's create a couple of device collections here to cover all the machines in our virtual lab environment. Let's start here by right-clicking in the white space and choosing to create a new device collection. Let's give this one a name here. How about HQ Workstations? Next up, we need to specify a limiting collection. If we hit the Browse button, it's going to return a list of all built-in device collections plus any custom device collections that you've defined. What this will do is ensure that our device collection can only target machines that are also in the limiting collection. This is a safety feature to ensure that you don't deploy something to somewhere that you didn't mean to. So another good strategy here is to create a base collection that you use as your limiter. So for example, we're creating a custom collection here called HQ Workstations. We could create a collection called All Workstations, and that could be the limiting collection for all future location-based collections. Now for our environment here, we're just going to choose All Systems because it contains all the machines that we're going to work with, and we'll hit OK. Next up, we need to get devices into this device collection, and we do that through membership rules. If we drop down the Add Rule button, we have a couple of different types of rules that we can create. A direct rule is essentially just a static list. A query rule is a dynamic list based on a WMI query. So direct rule is good for testing and development, query rules are good for production, and we have some other ones here that we'll look at in a little bit. Let's start simple here with the direct rule. If we hit this, it's going to take us through yet another wizard where we can search for resources. We can search for them by name or by any of these attributes within that resource class. And again, this is just WMI at work here. And what you'll want to do is specify our value, and you can use wildcard characters in here. Now, because we named our machines client1-nugg and client2-nugg, we can just type in client and then use the wildcard character there and hit next, and that will identify those two machines. We can check them, hit next again, and hit close, and now those two machines will live inside of this device collection. You'll also notice that we have a couple of options here for keeping this collection up to date. Incremental updates as well as full updates. Incremental updates run every 15 minutes and reevaluate the membership of this collection. And this is something you want to be really careful with because it is resource intensive. So you really want to save this strictly for your high priority collections that need it, like those collections you use for deploying antivirus updates. So we definitely don't need this. We'll uncheck it. And then a full update will run by default once a week to reevaluate the membership of this collection dynamically. And this is also pointless for us because we're dealing with a static collection here. So we're manually managing this collection for now. So this looks good. We'll go ahead and hit next, and we're done. So we can hit close and just give that a minute to bring those devices in. Notice that hourglass there letting us know that it's currently working on bringing those devices in. Eventually here, the refresh button will light up. We can hit it, and look at that. We now have 2 devices inside of here. We can right-click on it and choose Show Members, and it'll take us inside of that device collection, and we can see both of our client machines are now a part of this device collection. Now let's create another collection, only this time based on a query membership rule. So we're going to right-click in the white space, choose Create Device Collection, and let's create one that targets just domain controllers. So we'll call this one HQ Domain Controllers. We'll specify our limiting collection here once again as All Systems, and we'll hit Next. For our membership rule, we'll hit Add Rule, choose Query Rule this time, and we'll give this a name here. How about we just call this Domain Controllers? From here, we're going to edit the query, This will open up a very simple query builder used to construct WML-based queries. If you're familiar with SQL at all, this General tab is used to identify your select list, so what attributes you want to bring back, and your criteria here is constructing your where clause. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit Show Query Language, and I'm just going to paste a simple query in here that will help us identify just domain controllers in our environment. So I just added a where clause on here that targeted the primary group ID attribute where it's equal to 516. That's the ID for domain controllers. We can hit OK here, and if we hit Edit Query Statement again, we can actually see the result of that in the builder. Since I did a select star, which is everything, it's not going to return anything back in the General tab here, but our criteria will have that where clause right there. So that's it. Our query is ready to go. Now, because this is based on a query, it will dynamically update whenever this full update runs, which is once a week. So we'll leave the schedule on this one, hit next here, and close to create that collection. And what we should see when this is done loading is we should have our one domain controller DC Nugg inside of this custom collection. We can just give this a second, tab off, back on, and eventually here we'll get the refresh button. We hit refresh and look at that, we've got one member in there. If we show members, we should see DC Nugg is within. Let's create one more device collection here targeting servers, but we're going to do something interesting with this one. We're actually going to add multiple rules in here because we want to target all servers, but we want to exclude domain controllers from that list. So I'll right click in here one more time, choose Create Device Collection. We'll call this one HQ Servers. We'll specify our limiting collection here, once again, as all systems. We'll hit OK, and then we'll hit Next. Here for the add rule, let's start by creating a query rule that will identify just server machines in our environment. So we'll call this all servers. We'll edit our query statement. This time, let's construct this query using the builder. Now, we don't need to worry about the select list here. We really only care about the where clause. So we'll head over to criteria. We'll hit the splat button here, and we need to specify our attribute class and the attribute itself. So we'll hit the select button here. We'll choose attribute class. We're going to head down here to system resource that contains the attribute that we're looking for, which is operating system name and version. So there it is, system resource. We'll drop down the attribute here, and if we scroll down to the O's, we should see operating system name and version. We'll hit OK, and we're going to do a like here. So we'll do the operator is like, and our value is going to be Microsoft Windows NT, and then we'll use our wildcard character within there and enter in server. So this will only target server-based operating systems. We could modify our workstations collection based on a query with the exact same where clause, only place workstation instead of server, and that will identify all workstation machines. So we'll hit OK here, we'll hit OK here, and OK there, and that's it. Now, one more thing we need to do here is we want to omit our domain controller. So here we're going to add an exclude collection. What this will do is list all collections, and we'll hit that HQ domain controllers, and that will ensure that that domain controller is excluded from the query. But this looks good. We'll also leave this scheduled on a full weekly update. We'll hit next, next, and close. So I gave that just a minute here. If we click on it, eventually we should get the refresh button. We can hit it, and look at that. We've got two devices in there. If we open this up by showing members, we should see both of our servers, and notice our domain controller isn't in here because of that excluded collection. In the CBT Nugget, we talked about the purpose of device collections, how to create them, and the many ways to add members into them. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.